Fuck.
Hey, and we are live with the MMA Vivisection. We are doing a special double episode this week, and by special I mean absolutely normal. We're talking World Series of Fighting, Bellator 156, World Series of Fighting 31, headlining Marcos Galvao, Eduardo Dantas over on the Bellator card, and Blagoy Ivanov versus Josh Copeland over on the World Series of Fighting card. We don't have odds for the World Series of Fighting card. We got them for the Bellator card, so we'll give you that as we go. I'm joined by Eddie Mercado and Victor Rodriguez. Eddie, how you doing? Thank you for
I
joining me on this doubleheader.
am well. Thank you for being here. I am excited. I wish these two cards could be wrapped up into one gigantic event, but that's not the way it is. But each card has their own respective fights that draw my interest. So I'm in a good mood, to say the least.
Yeah, it's like two 5-fight main cards that are really solid. That if you put them together, or I think the World Series of, or actually, okay, 4 on the Bellator one, 5 for the World Series of Fighting. But if you put them together, you'd have like one 9 or 10 fight card that would just be a shitload of fun. Unfortunately, they're on at the same time, so even as a fan, you can't pretend that they're all one card and just watch them back to back unless you DVR one, and then so maybe that's your best option. DVR one. Once the first card is finished up, then start the other. Or if you're like me and you're on the West Coast, Bellator's on tape delay, so it doesn't even matter.
Or you can pray to the MMA gods, and maybe, just maybe, when one fight's happening, the other will be on commercial, and you can just toggle back and forth.
I think any praying you do to the MMA gods is met with exactly proportional injury bug occurrence. So do not ask for favors from the MMA gods. We do not need to stagger these fights just to get Frankie Edgar injured or something like that.
Yeah, if there's any subset of deities that's more willing to shit in your oatmeal, it's going to be those. Those ones, they're relentless.
Vic, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
I am in severe pain and horribly underslept, but I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
All right, I think we can hopefully. Does that mean that you'll be more coherent or less?
Hey, listen, we're going to roll the dice on this motherfucker. I don't know.
All right.
Let's find that together.
Well, we'll start out with this Bellator card. We're going to skip most of the undercard. There's a Javi Ayala versus Roy Boughton is opening it up with the heavyweight bout that looks pretty good. AJ Matthews versus Ben Ryder is on it. Carrington Banks is down there. There's some good, interesting talent, but not a lot of guys we're going to really jump in on. First fight we want to start with is Chris Honeycutt versus Mikkel Parlo, and I am starting to feed back on myself, so I got to be careful. Vic, why don't you carry it off with Parlo versus Honeycutt?
Well, here's an interesting bout because Honeycutt is one of the fighters that we've kind of seen Bellator really wanting to develop and give some degree of attention and sort of have him come up the ranks at a decent pace. Whereas you have someone who's more of an established or traveled veteran in Mikkel Parlo, whose record is currently a 13-2. He's had a bit of an odd journey so far in his career, and obviously I'm not sure if he's going to be able to deal with Honeycutt's wrestling, which is his bread and butter. Parlo has fought in Bellator a handful of times. He's done some great work in some of the places that he's been in, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's faced someone quite like Honeycutt who's able to just use so much to that top pressure no matter what happens. So it's going to really be interesting to see both how Honeycutt implements his wrestling and how Parlo responds to it. What kind of preparation he's in fact worked on in order for him to be able to weather that storm and come up on top.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Honeycutt's moving up to 185. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows what that's going to do? I didn't really think he was really, that big at welterweight. So I'm a little surprised that he's moving up. The guy he's taking on, Mikkel Parlo, is he is a pretty sound kickboxer. I mean, he's got really heavy kicks. He he's tough. He's not afraid to push someone up against the fence when he needs to. But I don't know. He's kind of been inconsistent as of late. He's had one fight in 2014 and only one fight in 2015. So he hasn't exactly been, in the cage getting his rounds in per se. Whereas Honeycutt has been fighting pretty regularly, even after his even after that brutal setback from he suffered from Bradley. He's been fighting pretty regularly. So I mean, I'm definitely going to give this to Honeycutt. I think his wrestling will be the key here. But I mean, Parlo can definitely catch him. I mean, that's definitely a thing. But I got to give it to Honeycutt. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be the favorite here. Oh, and for those who don't know, Zane just got himself a new microphone. So in the comment section, let us know what you think of it. If you hate it, tell us how much you hate it, and if you love it, tell us why.
If you think that we didn't get enough phallic comments in the comment section, well, I'm afraid you might be in for a big surprise, my friend.
Well, okay, so we may be stuck in a problem here where it seems like we've got a hell of a delay going with the audio. I don't know if you can hear it at your end, but I can hear it at mine. Hopefully it doesn't show. Hopefully it doesn't show up in the video, but like there's like a 10-second lag in the audio where I can still hear people talking while you're talking. So hopefully that didn't just screw us. I've been trying to fix it by putting in some headphones, and maybe that's the problem on my end, is my speakers feeding back through my mic, but it doesn't seem like that would cause it. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to apologize straight up to anybody listening if that's a problem, because I don't know any way that we can fix it. We can't stop and start the show to like fix lag or anything like that. It'll just cancel the show. So we're going to jump straight forward. Okay, who's picking who? Because I obviously missed all that trying to fix this.
We're both picking Honeycutt here, I believe. Parlo has a chance, but maybe not really.
Yeah, Parlo, I mean, it does seem like he's got that kind of... He's a quality power... He's basically just like a really powerful athlete, and I don't know that he has the polish that... who beat Honeycutt last time?
Bradley.
He doesn't have the polish that Bradley has, with Bradley's incredibly long career behind him to hurt Honeycutt quite the same way consistently.
Or the footwork.
I think if it's power, like I can trust Honeycutt to overpower Parlo if it's just going to be a battle of who's the more powerful athlete in there.
But this is at 185 now, so
Honeycutt's moving up.
Yeah, Honeycutt's at 185 for this one, so who knows what that's going to be like.
I gotta think that that's gonna be better for. I mean, he was massive. Like he's
really. I didn't think
he's
he
not
was
tall,
that
but
big.
he's thick as hell.
Yeah, he was very thick. He had a lot of lean mass on him, but it was like slathered on.
So anyway, I definitely think Honeycutt's a good choice, and I'm looking forward to that fight. Odds on that are Honeycutt is the favorite -235 to -300. Parlo is the underdog +175 to +210. And that brings us to Brandon Halsey versus John Salter. Eddie, go for it.
Okay, so this is going to be a matchup of two very talented grapplers, but kind of on the opposite spectrums of it. So you have Brandon Halsey, who was, Pac-10 conference champion, NCAA All-American wrestler. I mean, the dude can take you down, and he can hold you there. Salter, on the other hand, this guy's a finisher. He's 11-3, and 6 of those are knockouts, 5 of those are submissions. And those 3 losses, 1 KO, one submission. So, the dude isn't in there for the long haul. He's trying to get in, get out, get his paycheck. And he had a 1-2 record inside of the USC. And he lost to Gerald Harris, he beat Jason McDonald, and he lost to Dan Miller. He was 1-0 in Strikeforce and 1-0 in Bellator when he submitted Dustin Jacoby, which I felt like that was a complete just smoke check. He came in, he took him down, and he strangled him. And that was a little shocking to me, considering how sharp Jacoby is on his feet. So this is going to be interesting. I'm not sure exactly who the better the better grappler is here, and I wonder if it's going to be a striking match. I hope not. I definitely hope these guys grapple it out. But I think I'll have to lean towards Halsey. I think he might be able to hold Salter down, perhaps. But I feel like there's definitely laps in Halsey's game where, he just relies on his strength and athleticism so much that there's just gaps there for super technical guys to expose. And Salter could definitely do that, but I just don't think he will in this particular match. So I'm going to pick Halsey, and I think I got him by decision.
Vic, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not too far off from where Eddie's at, and the reasoning behind it is this. Yes, they are both very, very, very talented, very crafty grapplers. Problem is that Halsey certainly being much more reliant on his physicality, whereas Salter is much more of an aggressive, looking for submissions in any spot he can find them. Sometimes that's a little ill-advised. It gets him into a bit of trouble, but that's not necessarily. It's not something that's a constant problem. It just shows up here and there, every very sparsely. That said, Salter can also hit pretty hard. He's actually got some accuracy with some of his shots, and I'm not sure how Halsey's going to be able to deal with that. Then again, I don't know how Salter's going to be able to defend the takedown consistently and keep things up, although Salter may have better cardio in the end. So, I'm going to go with Salter on this one here. The odds are probably putting him as an underdog, but I'm actually going to go with Salter on this one. Probably catches him with something off his back, or probably reverses position somehow and ends up punishing Halsey for his takedown attempts.
Yeah, I feel like Salter's aggression may play into Halsey's own desire to be the more physical fighter. When you're aggressive like that, I don't know. I feel like that sets up big power takedowns, the kind of thing that Halsey really likes to hit, and the kind of power dominance from top that he likes to exert, because he can really be kind of a blanket there if he wants to. So, I don't know. It should be an interesting fight. Odds for that are, let's see, Halsey is a favorite -288 to -340, so he's a big favorite. John Salter, the underdog, +220 to +232.
A little longer than I would probably make, but I'm not terribly upset with it.
Yeah, I definitely feel like those are a little long, just given that Halsey, as such a pure wrestler, he is going to be predictable. Fighters know when Brandon Halsey comes into the cage, he's looking for takedowns, and that's it. So it's like, okay, I got to work on stuff and takedowns, and if I do that, I can probably outstrike him, or, if I can at least go for aggressive submissions constantly, I'm more likely to submit him. But I don't know. I don't know that I trust Salter to do that, even though he's definitely been an outperforming fighter, a fighter that continually outperforms expectations. That brings us to the co-main event, Chidi Njokuani versus Thiago Gonçalves. So it's supposed to be Chidi Njokuani versus Douglas Lima, but apparently after Ricky Rainey, I don't know what actually went down.
Well, Kimbo actually passed away.
Yeah.
And he was headlining the London event, and so they rebooked Douglas Lima to fight Paul Daly.
Okay.
Over in London.
Not that Kimbo was going to fight Paul Daly, but...
No, but he was going to headline.
Yeah, I know.
Thompson.
Yeah. So they moved Douglas Lima, and then they moved Gonçalves up from fighting Ricky Rainey to fighting Chidi Njokuani in the co-main event, which makes some sense. Vic, what are your thoughts?
We're really doing this? Okay. I really think Njokuani, despite his relative inexperience, really going to be able to just do what he needs to do. He's going to keep it standing right where he wants it, and he's just going to bring that punishment to his opponent's legs. I don't think there's much he can do in the way of stopping him. He's matured a lot more as a fighter. He's making a lot of the right improvements in some of his performance. And again, it's not perfect. I mean, he still has some work to do.
I think Vic's freezing on us. And Zane's muted. What's going on?
Okay. I'm screwing things up at every angle here.
It's this new microphone. It's ruined everything.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on. This audio feedback loop that's happening. I think that we are getting a regular feedback loop. Oh shit! I figured out what it is. There we go. God damn it! I'm an idiot. Okay, that explains it. I had the show playing in the background of the show. So
don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Never mind.
That's a teachable moment, though. I appreciate you finding that now, because if you're doing a live show and you got that fire Vietnamese porno downloading in the background, this is what you should use, an excuse that's valid and that makes some, yeah, sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Well, I'll let you skate.
So hallelujah, I have figured out what the fuck was going on, and I'm no longer just sitting here wondering why in the hell everything is going haywire. So, all right, problem solved. We can now focus in better. Vic's already given his pick on Chidi Njokuani, Thiago Gonçalves, right?
Yes.
I think he froze.
But he froze halfway through it. So, give us your finishing thoughts again on that.
All right. Well, the thing is, Gonçalves his professional record's 18-4. He certainly isn't a slouch. He's fought some pretty tough guys, but I just don't see how he's really bringing anything to the table that Njokuani can't control. He's not going to try to wrestle him. He's not going to try to clinch him against the cage and do that sort of thing. If anything, he'll probably get reversed in the clinch and get punished for that. So I really think that Njokuani has the tools to pull this off. I think he's going to be able to win this.
All right. And Eddie, what are your thoughts?
I think I'm glad that this was rebooked, because I didn't really want to see Lima and Njokuani, to be quite honest. Even though it sounds like it's going to be two strikers going in there, just stand and bang. I didn't believe that for a second. And to be quite honest, Njokuani has been underperforming in my eyes. I don't feel like he's well, I know he hasn't finished in 3 years, and I can't figure out what it is about him that makes him so gun-shy. I feel like he has every tool necessary to go out and just completely serve 99% of the people he faces, and it's always close. Now, I don't know if that's like a little brother syndrome, or if he's like just been a sparring partner kind of thing, but I feel like he just doesn't go out and impose his will when I feel like he is more than capable of doing so. With that being said, Thiago Jambo, he was supposed to fight Ricky Rainey, who Njokuani fought last. He hasn't exactly been active at all. He had a fight in 2014, one in 2015. I don't know. His last fight was at a catch weight. It's just it seems stacked against him in this one. So I'm gonna pick Njokuani, and I really hope that he comes out and puts on a spectacular performance, because I need that to continue to be a Chidi Njokuani fan.
Yeah, I think that it may be too just a long-term confidence thing. Like I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and I was really, my whole thing was going to be like, so it's taken you, we've all heard your name for years now, knowing that you're a prospect coming up, and it's taken a long time for you to get here. Why is that? And his feeling was that, like, I'm just now getting to the point where I need to be. Like, he's really glad that he took the time he did on the regional circuit to get to a level like Bellator or the UFC, rather than jumping in. Because he also said that, like, he was, he feels like he probably did jump into his career too early and too young, and has just had to do a lot of learning on the fly. So I think it could just be one of those things where it's been a long-term development thing for him, where it's taken him a long time to figure out exactly how to put together a well-rounded MMA game. And beyond that, I mean, it might just be a function of the gym he's at. Like training at a Muay Thai gym principally may not be giving him kind of the technical depth that he needs to really be competitive everywhere, which might be making his striking more tentative. Because it's like, well, I can't be a really highly competitive wrestler or grappler, so I have to constantly guard myself and try and make sure I stay upright and try and make sure I stay out of all these bad situations instead of having the confidence of like, oh, I can just take care of myself everywhere, so I don't have to worry about anything I do.
Yeah, I mean, you really saw that in his last fight with Ricky Rainey. I mean, it took me about 10 times of watching that fight to finally score it for Njokuani. I mean, I'm dead up. I thought Rainey had it, and then something clicked for me when I finally saw I made a case for Njokuani to win that. But man, he has all the potential in the world. He just has to pull the trigger.
Yeah, that seems like a big kind of a constant case we hear with like especially successful fighters' younger siblings. Is that they're always like, oh, they've got so much potential. They're so much better than the younger brother is always more technical and better schooled than the older brother. But you see Sergio Pettis, Diego Lima. I'm sure there are others.
Dan Miller.
Yeah, and they're just never.
Or Dan Lozon.
Dan Lozon, there you go, Dan Lozon, and they're just never the same fighter that the older one is. So hopefully he can get over that hump, but it definitely feels like it's out there sitting
And
over.
you know what's crazy is Dan Lozon's nickname is the Upgrade. So it's almost it's ironic.
I like it though. That's pretty dope. The Upgrade.
A little tragic.
Mm.
Odds on this fight: Njokuani is minus 280 to minus 268. Thiago Gonçalves plus 200 to plus 212. So pretty reasonable favorite for Njokuani.
I'm not upset at any of that. That sounds fair, I guess. Yeah.
And that brings us to the main event: Marcos Galvao versus Eduardo Dantas. Eddie, what are your thoughts?
Finally, this fight is going to happen. This fight has been rescheduled so many times for various injuries and illnesses, and it's just finally going to happen.
I'm pretty sure it's been canceled at least once, like the day before, so I wouldn't count your chickens too much yet.
Yeah, Yeah. You're right. No more praying. No praying to the MMA gods for the rest of the week. Let's just let this one go. So, man, this is a rematch. The first time they fought, a lot was different. Eduardo Dantas was the champion. Galvao, man, he did not do very well in that fight. His the gap in striking prowess was on display, and it was almost tough to watch. They have a history together. I believe Galvao was a instructor of Dantas at one point, so there's a pupil master kind of relationship.
They're very good friends too at the time.
Right. Yeah. So you saw Dantas knocked out Galvao, and he crumbled, man. He just collapsed to the canvas and just started crying, and it was a tough moment to watch, man. Like I couldn't even imagine like knocking out someone that means what Galvao means to him, but it's part of the job, unfortunately.
Kind of broke their friendship too, so like.
Yeah, it's like is it worth it? Like, how much did he get paid for that fight? You know what I mean? Just saying. I don't know. I mean, I understand it's a business, and sometimes you got to fight teammates, but I also strongly believe that sometimes you got to say no. But I'm not saying this fight shouldn't happen. I'm definitely excited. Galvao is pretty wicked on the ground. He won the title by knee-barring Joe Warren, which was gruesome. Joe Warren was screaming and got the verbal submission, which you don't see too often. But I feel like he still has gaps in his footwork, does Galvao. So, I mean, I'm going to pick Dantas here. I don't see any reason not to, So, and for whatever reason, I just cannot remove the visual I have of Damasio Page coming out in the WBC and just flattening Galvao. I mean, that will forever be like my schema for
Yeah,
Marcos Galvao.
but if you follow Damasio Page's career, it is like full of highlights and then embarrassing losses. That's like those are the only two things he has. It's like a much more condensed version of Melvin Guillard.
Okay.
It's much more like back and forth, but it's that same kind of thing. Like he just either totally wrecks people or he just gets like choked out in a minute, and you're like, what the hell was that?
Yeah, that was tough to watch. That was wild.
Yeah. All right. So Vic, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny how this fight was pretty much inevitable anyway. I mean, even if they didn't want this fight to happen, it was undeniable that Dantas was going to work his way back up to get a title shot after losing his belt, and that of all people, it was Galvao who was able to take out Joe Warren with that really beautiful knee bar. That I think it should be noted. Maybe Warren could have defended against. I'm not knocking the guy or anything like that. Heat of the moment, he's a professional fighter. I'm not. I'm just saying that probably could have gone a little differently. But you know, this is where we stand. We have the rematch between the this odd and we don't see anything very. We don't see too many stories like this in MMA. So it's kind of interesting on that alone. But just based on skill, I mean, it's interesting because Dantas is such a dynamic athlete in spurts. But at the same time, we saw how susceptible he was to wrestling, and I'm not sure how that's going to really work out here. I don't think Galvao's really going to try to work that same angle. They're probably going to try to outmatch each other standing, and if it happens to go to the floor, well, then that's just how they're going to have to work with it. They're going to have to scramble and try to most likely just attack submissions and that sort of thing, not really regarding too much of the standing up portion once they're down. So, you know, this is actually a tough one for me to pick because, you know, I'd kind of side with Dantas, not just because of how it went last time, but the fact that he's just the way he fights seems suited to really give a guy like Galvao some serious fits. But by that same token, it's almost like Galvao's he's gotten some sneaky improvements in there. He doesn't seem to he seems a little more measured when he's standing. His defense hasn't looked as spotty as it has before. So I'm actually going to go with the odd pick here. I'm going to go with Galvao on this one. I think he might be able to put this. He might be able to take this most likely by decision.
Well, there's a couple of weird things at work here too, in that. Do you realize that the Tyson Nam loss is just 4 fights ago for Eduardo Dantas?
Yeah, a fight that he didn't have to take, and he did outside of Bellator, and he got knocked out, making Tyson Nam the lineal champion.
That was in 2012.
Yes.
That was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's only fought 4 times since then. And, you know, one of those was a loss to Joe Warren, and the other one was a win over Mike Richmond, but it's not. That was his last fight, and that was over a year ago. Was his win over Mike Richmond? So Dantas has been incredibly inactive since they first fought, and over the past few years, which it's tough to see for a kid like that who came up with such a blitz of like fighting 4 or 5 times a year on his way into Bellator, and is just slowed to a trickle. But still, I can't help but feel that Dantas just has Galvao's number. Like, you know, it's just one of those things, like watching the first fight, it seemed like Galvao was just so unwilling to fight Dantas because of their, like, their friendship, that even if they're not friends anymore, I don't know how well Galvao is gonna be able to overcome that once he's back in the cage against this person.
See, I think you got that backwards. I think Galvao's pissed, and he'll be more about it. And I think Dantas is gonna be like, I just knocked my buddy out. Like, let me not do that again.
I don't know. I thought, maybe I'm misremembering this, but I remember Dantas seeming pretty cold the first time when they were actually fighting.
Yeah. I remember
and
that.
Galvao just seemed totally like...
Right, for sure. But now, it's like, well, the gloves are off, you know?
Yeah, but, you know, is that really how it's going to be? Or is he going to walk in there, see him again, and be like, I can't do it. I can't hurt this kid, you know? Like,
I don't know. It's like Daniel-san and Mr. Miyagi. Like if they battled, who would win? And what if you already saw Daniel-san knock out Mr.
because like,
Miyagi and they
you
fought
know,
again?
Dante's being cold the first time, like maybe that's just how he always is in the cage. Maybe he can always trust himself to be that switched off, and he's going to fight however he needs to fight in any situation. Whereas if Galvao's going to come in running on emotion, then that's a major knock against him.
You know what? I think that might be the case because now that you said that about turning the switch on and off, the second the fight was over, the switch was turned off and he was back to being Dantas and back to being a person.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if that's something that we should really hang on to very much, because it assumes a lot of things about both of them that we're not really sure about until it actually happens. So I don't know. I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I'm just it's weird. You never know how these things play out.
When somebody's fought as little as Dantas, I don't really trust them to be that consistent.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And so, I mean, already in this fight, I feel like you're just kind of dealing with X factors all over the place. Yeah. Like, Galvao has looked improved. He looked good against Joe Warren, but he's also getting to a point in his career, having fought since 2003, where we should really be expecting all the wheels to fall off at any time. So there's a lot going on in this fight, and I think part of it has to be, too, just like if you go back and look at their first fight, how much more comfortable Dantas looked with it. And I just kind of feel like he's just going to be happier with this fight every time. Or just better with this fight every time. Maybe that's just me, but there are a lot of weird outside factors to consider in a fight like this that make me uncomfortable just picking it based on a style matchup or a skill matchup.
Yeah, I would not bet on this fight at all.
The odds on this, Dantas is the favorite, -150 to -184. Galvao, the underdog, +110 to +156. So it's pretty close odds. And we saw too, like right after that fight, like my feeling was kind of like, okay, Joe Warren got caught, but he's still pretty much the Joe Warren we've seen all throughout, and he's doing great. And then he came out and fought Darian Caldwell, and Caldwell just ruined every part of his world.
Yeah,
and
that was fun to watch. That's probably the best suplexes I've ever seen in my life, dude.
Which is awesome and great, and Caldwell looked amazing, and it made me a believer in Caldwell in a way that I've never been before, but it also then makes you ask questions about that Galvao Warren matchup. Like,
yeah.
Is Joe Warren, he's near 40. Are we seeing him decline to a point where he's just going to be losing fights? The fights that he would have been competitive in before, he's going to start losing.
Yeah.
That's always hard to tell. That's the unfortunate dangers of MMA math is you really never know exactly how somebody's showing up for each individual fight. So we're going to jump over to this World Series of Fighting card now because we got to run through this too. It's got a bunch of good fights on it. We don't have odds, like I said at the beginning, so I'm not going to give you odds. But starting out over on the undercard, Lorenzo Hood, Tyler King. Just want to dive into this really quick because Hood at one point was believed to be a pretty big, interesting up-and-coming talent for Bellator, and he never actually ended up fighting for them. If you look over his career, there's as much, like on Tapology, there's as much gray for canceled bouts for him as there are anything else. And even his last fight ended up being a no contest. So, just real quick, do you guys have any thoughts on this? Vic, do you have any thoughts on this fight, this debut for Hood with World Series of Fighting?
Well, look, man, I think we can agree here. World Series is most fun and most insane when crazy cancellations and last-minute replacements and things of that ilk kind of rear their head. So I noticed that what you just mentioned late last night when I was looking at this card, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know how. Is this guy going to make it this time too? Is this going to be another one of those situations where he either gets injured or he can't make it, or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Lorenzo Hood, I'm still waiting to see what is the. Um, I see what some people see in him as far as what he can bring in the future. You know, maybe he's got to work on some things, but I'm not as overly impressed just yet. And by that I mean obviously, and again, no disrespect to him or his talents. It's just that for all the hype that I've seen and heard, I'm not quite sure he's really there to match that level just yet. So I am interested in seeing how this bout plays out. I believe his opponent is more of a submission grappling type fighter. So that's going to be interesting to see how he deals with that as well, because from what I gather, he's not really fighting guys that are grappling that consistently on the submission grappling scene exclusively, or at least more often than most MMA fighters. But yeah, that being said, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting to see what the deal is with Hood, and so yeah, I'll tune into that because that should be interesting.
What are your thoughts on this fight, Eddie?
I'm excited for this fight. For one, Lorenzo Hood is a friend of mine, so of course I'm biased. But
Yeah.
beyond that, I mean, styles make fights. This is nothing new, and especially in the heavyweight division, you got a flashy kickboxer and you got a submission savvy grappler. So I mean, who knows? I feel like whoever imposes their will first is gonna win this fight.
Yeah, I'm just interested to finally see Hood make a debut on a bigger stage, because it feels like he was about to when he was about to Bellator. I was like, okay, they can really do something and build around this guy, get him some good matchups, let him build up a little bit of a head of steam, and then it just fell apart, and it's been falling apart since then. And now we're finally going to see him make that debut off a loss and a no contest over in World Series of Fighting. So I'm really interested to see how, can they put it together for him? Can they help him build that momentum and be a bigger name for them in their heavyweight division?
Yeah, I mean, he has the appeal, he has the look. He's just gotta get in there and get it done.
Get wins. That's the big thing. And that brings us to the opening main card bout: John Howard, Michael Arendt. Vic, what are your thoughts on this fight?
I'm sorry, you had a bit of stuttering there. If you could please repeat that.
John Howard, Michael Arendt. Vic, what are your thoughts?
There you go. Okay, perfect. This reasons as well, because Michael Arendt is currently 15-10 in his record. He's got a few submissions there, 5 TKOs and 2 clean knockouts. He does have losses to Brandon Thatch, Casey Usola, and he is coming off a loss to Brock Larson. The main consistent theme here with Arendt is that he's one of those guys who, well, he puts on some pretty amazing, much like we mentioned earlier, one of those fighters who just, he's just big, or sometimes it's just, an iffish decision that's kind of forgettable. The situation with Arendt is a bit stranger, though, because it's very obvious that this is set to favor Doomsday Howard being a more seasoned veteran, better fight IQ. Hopefully his weight cut situation has gotten better in recent years, so that should also be something else. But Arendt just seems to lose to a certain level of guys, and I don't see him breaking through in this one, so it is unfortunate, but I got to pick Doomsday here.
Yeah, Eddie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you got Michael Arendt who's stepping up for Thiago Miller, who's out with a calf injury. And, I mean, he's a regional dude, just stepping up on short notice. Expect him to come out hot, guns a-blazing, with nothing to lose, On the other side, you got John Doomsday Howard, went 7-7 in the UFC. I actually spoke to him earlier this week. You can check the interview out on bloodyelbow.com. He went in depth about his release from the UFC and, the whole Tim Means popping hot and, that whole thing and the politics involved. But, yeah, he's training at Sityo Tong and with Mark Delagrati. Same old John Doomsday, nothing different. Kickboxing, starting to wrestle a little bit. Of course, I mean, how can you not pick John Howard here?
Yeah, he's what I like to think of as a quadruple A fighter, a guy that's good enough to dominate on the regional scene all the time, and then just doesn't quite have the pieces to be an elite level top of the world kind of fighter.
Well, he was talking about fighting John Fitch. He's calling out the Fitchster. So
yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see him
in
in World Series of Fighting. I think he can I think he can be a quality opponent for World Series of Fighting, a quality fighter for them. I don't know that he beats John Fitch, but I'd be happy to see it. All right, that brings us to Phil Haas, Joshua Key. I'm gonna just lead this off real quick because I'm excited about this. It's not a fight that we need to, that is necessarily one that fans should be keyed in on. Joshua Key is certainly mostly there to lose to Phil Haas. But, I think Haas is one of the best middleweight prospects in the world, and I am really excited to see what he's going to do in World Series of Fighting. I know he kind of got dropped out of the most recent season of The Ultimate Fighter, which I always think that Ultimate Fighter is a terrible way to tell how good fighters are, because it gets you really overhyped about people who fight really well on short notice in the tough house, and it gets you really underhyped about fighters that fight really well in a long camp or with lots of prep, or young prospects like Haas, who's 3-0 and who just need a lot more seasoning. So I'm actually kind of glad that he's out of the UFC right now and able to get a little more time on the regional scene before he gets dropped back into the UFC middleweight division. But Eddie, what are your thoughts on this fight?
I'm excited. Hopefully it's a showcase. I can't see Joshua Key coming in here and shocking the world. I just can't see that. So hopefully, Jackson Winklejohn have something going on here with this kid. I mean, he's hyper athletic. He was a collegiate wrestler, so he's got everything's in place for him to be a superstar. He just has to stay healthy, take smart fights, not get too ahead of himself, and I think he will be a force to be reckoned with.
Vic, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to your point regarding Phil Haas, I mean, it's kind of hard to see the UFC signing a prospect that's 3-0 directly, just signing him outright. So it kind of made sense for them to try to encourage him to try out for the Ultimate Fighter. Although it is unfortunate that they didn't seem to have any. I didn't see his performance on the show, so I can't really judge that. But if they're going to grant him his release so he can get a little more experience out on the regional scene, or in this case, World Series of Fighting, good on them. So I totally agree with you on that. And it is a weird matchup in this case because you're talking about Joshua Key, who's currently 6 wins and 11 losses. He's not. It's not something that is a very encouraging sign. Although Haas being 3-0, I mean, there's a lot of upside to him here. This certainly should be something that the test that Haas should be able to pass.
Yeah, I think it's just a confidence builder. It's like, hey, you were, everybody had you hallmarked to be a finalist or one of the finalists for Tough, and you lost in the opening round, and you need to go out there and just get back in and get a win. That's what this fight feels like. That brings us to Luis Palomino, Shaman Moraes. This looks like a hell of a good fight. Vic, what are your thoughts?
I totally concur. The only problem I'm having here with this right now is the fact that Shaman Moraes is such a punishing, brutal kickboxer, and Palomino has two things that are working against him in a massive way here. Number one, his seeming inability to defend against leg kicks, and number two, his willingness to just absorb, just Homer Simpson his way through a fight, and that's not doing him any favors, man. Not just for his fighting career, but his long-term life after fighting. That is a bit of a bothersome deal here, but I do think that Palomino certainly is the far more complete fighter. I just think he's probably going to have to wear Moraes down a bit for him to be able to implement his game. He's going to have to slow it down, make it ugly, and then be able to, just with that same grind and pressure, then break him down and either work for a submission or just try to fight his way to beat him down and then get a decision out of that.
So you're picking Palomino, though?
You know what? I am in this one, despite probably. I mean, I probably should go with Moraes because of the fact that he is a pretty smart striker and all that. But I don't know. Something tells me Palomino might pull this off.
All right, Eddie, what are your thoughts?
I think there's a lot of interesting aspects about this fight for me. One being their styles. Yes, they're both strikers, but you have Marias is more of this technical, fundamental kind of Muay Thai specific striker, and Palomino is more of a I'm gonna swing and throw wild punches at you, and if one connects, then you're probably going to sleep. So I mean, it's their styles, their striking styles are built to combat one another. So that's exciting as hell to me, and I hope they stand there and exchange. And who gets the better of that? I'm not sure. Um, I think when Marias gets drawn into brawls, he's less effective, as we saw when he fought Marlon Marias, and that got him into trouble. That was ultimately his demise. And Palomino, I mean, he can be over-aggressive and get caught when he's swinging wildly. So, I mean, there's ample openings for either guy in this fight. I think the X factor here is the fact that Palomino is moving down to featherweight. And will his power translate? Will his chin be as good? Those are question marks to me. So because of the unknowns, I have to go with Marias here. This is his second fight in the featherweight division, so I'm gonna pick the young gun.
Yeah, it's like I forget having basically sort of. It's partially a problem with all the Mariases out there that like I feel like I've heard about Shaman Marias for a lot longer than I have. Where I'm like, oh, Shaman Marias is a really seasoned vet. He's been doing this. He's good. He's like, he's a tough guy with a deep record and all that. And then I look back and it's like he's been fighting since 2012, and he's 8-1.
It's like anyone with the last name Silva.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, Silva. He's been around forever.
Well, it doesn't help that Shaman's fought a bunch of guys that really aren't very good either.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And Palomino, on the other hand, he's been fighting since 2006 and has fought everyone under the sun and their brothers and their cousins and probably some of their kids at this point. And like it is really hard to bet against Palomino unless his chin just goes. It's really hard to bet against that kind of veteran savvy in a fight like this. I mean, Marias did just beat Robbie Peralta, who's kind of in a similar boat, but Peralta is also I don't know. Peralta's a different fighter than Luis Palomino by a long shot.
I wouldn't say he's necessarily that much better. You
No,
know what I mean?
no,
Different.
just different. So, Peralta is always to me the example of exactly how far you can get when all you have is athleticism and you never really develop a skill game of any sort.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see Robbie Peralta. Like, he was a great athlete who really never, like, he always trained out of Explode Fight Team.
Well, the thing about Peralta also is that he strikes me as the kind of guy who didn't really discover that athleticism within him until a little later than usual too. It's one of those guys who probably didn't play football or anything in high school, or at least didn't dedicate himself to that, and then found fighting after that. And wow, I didn't know I could do this and do well with my physical attributes. So
yeah. So that I don't know. I have to pick Palomino there, but Marias, he's got like basically I would expect him to make leaps and bounds every time out. So he could just be way better than he was the last time we saw him fight. That brings us to the co-main event: Jason High versus Mike Ricci. Vic, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Oh man, yeah, I'm torn on this one, man. I mean, look, I don't have that much faith in Mike Ricci in terms of he's a good fighter. I just don't think, despite Eddie's love for him, I know, I don't think that he's just that top caliber guy that we've been waiting for him to blossom into, and if so, at least not yet. Whereas Jason High, coming off a very long layoff, he had the ugly departure from the UFC, some injury problems, suspension, and now he's coming back. Who knows what kind of condition he's going to be in. Man, I don't know. I really think that this is one of those fights where World Series of Fighting might, not that they're betting on their fighters. They might be banking on Jason High getting a title shot if he wins. I don't know if that's a guarantee for Ricci though on the other end. So, but as far as the fight itself goes, man, I mean, Ricci has slick kickboxing skills. He trains with the mad genius himself, Faraz Zahabi. But Jason High's wrestling and his tenacity, his ability to just get in guys' faces when he's able to implement that game, it's something that a guy like Ricci could really have a lot of trouble with. Although he does seem much more content to try to stand and trade with the guy if he feels it, it's one of those points of pride that some fighters have that. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I'm thinking it's probably going to be Mike Ricci here, just based on having a somewhat more consistent schedule and sharper and more accurate striking overall.
All right, Eddie, is there any question about who you're rolling with? That's right. Always fan.
I put that on the screen behind you. I thought I was going to see Mike Ricci on a bearskin rug naked like this, posing like this.
I actually spoke with him before this fight, and he's a interesting dude to say the least, man. I think he might be a serial killer. Like, the dude is, like, just different, man. Like,
they collect those up at TriStar.
Yeah, seriously, like, Rory, like, the same kind of weird, like, coldness, like you don't want to be alone with this dude. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of...
Rory are such good friends, and that's not a joke.
But, man, they both were promised title fights with a win here. But, yeah, I just don't know. Jason High is super athletic, but he also loses to a certain caliber of competition. Is Ricci that level, though? Is Ricci that caliber? I guess is the real question here. Jason High's submission defense is phenomenal, so I don't see him getting submitted here. We saw that when he fought RDA. I mean, RDA had him dead to rights in a couple submission holds, and High was able to power out of it, which is... I mean, that was very impressive. But he was also hit a bunch, He's out there getting tagged by RDA. I feel like Mike Ricci's kickboxing is a lot more crisp and technical than RDA's. And I don't know. Like, who has Jason High beat? Who has he really beat? What's the biggest name?
Let's see.
Jordan Mean?
Jordan Mean, Andre Galvao.
No, not Andre Galvao. Come on.
No, I mean, look, Galvao is famous, certainly, but his MMA run was not.
I know.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, he hasn't really he hasn't beat a name. You know what I mean?
He does. He has a better overall resume than he does have a winning resume. Like, he's a kind of guy who gets in a lot of very competitive fights with a lot of good fighters.
Yeah.
And is not necessarily known for winning the big fights when they're in front of him.
Now, I'm not saying Ricci has an impressive resume, but at least he got Sotiropoulos out of there. You know what I mean? He fought him, Gurgel.
Gurgel.
You can make the ghost of Gurgel, but you can make an argument that he
would be.
Dude, he mollywopped Neil Magny. Some people say he beat Miles Jury in that fight. That was a split decision loss. I mean, the dude's got skills, man. I gotta pick Mike Ricci here. I think he's man, I don't know. I think he's special and he's crazy enough to get it done, and he's technical enough to be technical throughout the whole fight. Where I feel like High might break down if he doesn't get his way. So I'm gonna pick Ricci here. And a little side note: Mike Ricci's talking about moving up to featherweight to fight John Fitch. So a whole bunch of people calling out the Fitchster.
Is Fitch probably featherweight?
What's that?
Moving up to welterweight.
Yeah, moving up.
You said moving up to featherweight.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, yeah. Welterweight.
Yeah.
I'm excited, man. It's Mike Ricci. Come on, man. Ricci fever. Catch it.
Ricci fever.
All right. That brings us to the main event. Blagoy Ivanov versus Josh Copeland. And I am going to ask Eddie to lead us off here again. God knows why. We all know what he's going to pick. But Eddie, why don't you tell us why Josh Copeland is going to beat Blagoy Ivanov?
Oh, man. Josh Copeland. Well, for one, I interviewed him for this fight, and you can check that out on bloodyelbow.com. It's very interesting. It's talking about his training up at Grudge Training Center with Trevor Whitman and Justin Wren and sparring Justin Gaethje. It's good stuff. But, man, two heavy-ass, tough-ass dudes with bombs in their hands and chins and just bellies and, like, dude, this here is just going to be, and I don't think this is ending early. I think this is going to be a just gun-ho fight, like a good old-fashioned just fight. You know, Blagoy, Ivanov, he throws his punches from his hip, even though his timing is impeccable. He can counter, he can back up and swing at the same time. The dude's got bolos, but with that comes a whole bunch of lapses, in that, a bunch of openings that someone could connect on. And Copeland is a pretty savvy boxer who is deceptively fast for how big he is. As far as grappling goes, Ivanov is a Sambo master, so, you have to give him the edge. Although Copeland does have collegiate experience, Ivanov is just a whole another level. And honestly, I feel like Copeland in the past has shown, weaknesses as far as being held against the cage.
Mm-hmm.
And Ivanov has no issues clinching with you and holding you there. So I feel like Ivanov might have more ways to win here as far as holding against the cage, as far as throwing bolos on the feet and hurting Copeland. And I think he could definitely finish on the ground with a submission. So, Copeland, at this stage, he's only been fighting since 2012. That's 4 years. So at this stage, I feel like he will continue to struggle with specialists, and Ivanov is that. So although I like Copeland a lot, the Cuddly Bears is a perfect name for the dude. Like, I want to go have a brewski with him and, like, invite him to Sunday dinner, but I got to pick Ivanov here. I feel like he is just a certain world-class level that Copeland isn't necessarily at right now. So I got Ivanov.
From Eddie's inevitable betrayal of those that he loves and who trusted him.
To Mercado.
Vic, what are your thoughts?
Let me ask you something. I don't mean to trash the guy, but how long has Copeland, and Eddie, you'd probably have a little more insight on this since you just recently spoke to him. How long has Copeland been at Grudge?
How long has he been at Grudge?
Yeah, it might not have come up in the conversation. That's fine if you don't have it.
Couldn't have been. He's only been fighting for 4 years, so
I think he started there, though, I think.
Okay. Well, how is his cardio still that suspect?
He's one of those. He belongs to
the. Who said that? Who said his cardio suspect?
I am, because he seems to kind of, he starts to slow down after that second round, man.
Dude, look at the pace he sets, man. He's out there swinging. Like, what? They're heavyweights.
One way or let me put it this way, and this is I would say this is true of Ivanov as well. Copeland belongs to the class of heavyweights I like to think of as guys who are fighting their way into shape.
Yes. Okay.
And that's just the way it is. Like, you get some dudes who are like, they're big enough to be heavyweights, and they don't have to like get way trimmer or cut way down to lose the weight and all that. And like we see with Augusto Sakai, like, they're just gonna kind of slowly fight their way into shape. They could be fighting for like 6 or 7 years, and you're like, and then suddenly like they have abs one day. All of a sudden they'll have some abs, and you're like, where did this happen? And there's a certain type of heavyweight that just like slowly fights their way into good shape over their career, and he seems like one of those dudes.
All right, yeah. Well, that sounds fair. Well, here's the situation that the problem that I have with Copeland thus far. His record is standing right now as of. I'm sorry, his record is currently 12-3. The 3 losses that he's got: Vitaly Minakov, totally understandable. Jared Rosholt and Ruslan Magomedov. And there is, again, that same theme. There's just a certain caliber of fighter that he's just losing to. And I don't think he's going to break that streak now. I think Blagoy I think he's going to be too much. A guy who's deceptively strong, he could put it on your chin and just really wobble you fairly easily. And I don't see Copeland getting out of the way of that. I don't see him being evasive enough or being able to disrupt his timing. I don't see him taking him down and holding him there, especially. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think Blagoy's fought and lost to probably. No, that's probably not a fair thing, but he has fought better opposition. I will say this: the only heavy wrestler that
he hasn't fought better opposition.
Yeah, I was about to say, Rochal's probably better than anybody that Blagoy's faced.
Ruslan Magomedov, like Alexander Volkov, is far and away the best fighter that Blagoy Ivanov has fought, and
yes.
Ruslan Magomedov is as good as Alexander Volkov.
He is an excellent fighter. But I mean, as far as wrestlers go, I think the only guy that kind of has that style is maybe Zach Jensen, and he's not even. I mean, that is one thing that Ivanov, it does give me pause. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to deal with the wrestling for a long period of time. But again, I don't know if Copeland's going to be able to withstand those hits, man, and that's really something that's going to be able to end the fight fairly early, whereas Copeland's going to probably have a longer...
Well, I think the challenge for Copeland has been generally that he's really not a wrestler. Like, he doesn't have a good wrestling game. He's a boxer, and what he wants to do is move around, stay active, and outbox people and out-tough them. And he's been able to do that largely over his career, but yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that Ivanov could be too much too soon at this point, which is funny because Ivanov is younger than Copeland and has fought worse opposition, but he's just a more polished, more complete fighter. All the parts of Ivanov's game fit together. He throws these big looping shots, which move right into takedowns, which move right into an aggressive sub game. Copeland has really only shown himself to be an active outside boxer who can lean on people a lot but can also get trapped up against the cage and has never shown an active or really great takedown game or any other parts of his game that are that evolved. So I think that Copeland can improve a lot, but it's on him to show that improvement, whereas Ivanov just kind of has to stay the course.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
You know what? Ivanov did face Fedor Emelianenko in a Sambo match.
Yeah.
That kind of counts as level of competition.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Exactly. It's Sambo, and I mean, for all the for all the good stuff that brings with it, just the context alone is not. I wouldn't put it in the same.
It would be like giving somebody a lot of credit for their amateur career, which I tend to try not to do because it's like it just doesn't translate. We see great fighters who had great amateur careers do terrible as pros, and fighters that had really spotty amateur careers go out and do fine as pros. It's just...
Or explode careers.
Explode careers. You see people who came out of Explode and do awesome or generally good, and you see guys who come out of Explode and just look terrible. It's really hard to tell. On that note, I think that pretty much covers everything for us. Sorry we don't have odds yet for this fight. We probably would have had them tomorrow, but I got other stuff to do tomorrow, so we're getting the show today. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at TheSameTime. You can find Eddie on Twitter at Eddie Mercado. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. You can find all of us at Bloody Elbow. We will be having a Care Don't Care and a UFC Vivi coming at you tomorrow. I'll be doing an MMA Prospectus on Friday. And then we'll have a 6th round after the fights, Knuckle Up next week, all that good stuff. We're going to have all sorts of interviews, content about this UFC Ottawa card, and all sorts of other stuff. So thanks, everyone, for staying with us.
Give us a like. Give us a like on YouTube.
That's a thumbs up. Subscribe to MMANation.com. Both those things help us out a bunch, and we'll see you next time.